Hi everyone, Dean Somerset here. We're going to go through some of the basic technique setup things for looking at how to set up a deadlift properly so you have the best chance of having a strong pull without injuring yourself. First step, we want to make sure you have some sort of minimal footwear or even go barefoot. The main reason is that if your heel is slightly off the ground, like in most conventional cross trainers or running shoes, it actually lifts you up higher through your hips and through your legs to be able to put your hips at a higher position, which is great if you're in things like running or squatting, but at the same time, if you're trying to lift a weight off the floor, being in a slightly higher position means that your back and your hips have to pull through a bigger range of motion to be able to lift the weight off the ground. And it also means that you don't have that ground feedback coming off the heel or off the ball of your foot as equally, which means you're not going to be able to develop the power you're looking to. Second, when you're getting set for the deadlift, don't think of this as being initially a vertical driven exercise. Think of it as more of a horizontal exercise coming from the hips. So when I see a lot of people set up for a deadlift, if they're doing it kind of incorrectly, they'll think about rounding their back to lower down to grab the weight, and then lifting straight up like this. So rather than getting their hips involved into it, they think of using pretty much their entire lower back to do the work. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, most beginners don't have the strength or control to be able to stabilize their spine properly to be able to lift. When you see elite lifters doing it, they have more of a rounded back position, but they're really skilled at being able to maintain that position so that way they don't slip into end range flexion and wind up hurting themselves. For most beginners, I would say stay with a straight, neutral spine. So start standing nice and tall. Think about where your hip bones are, driving them back as far as possible while keeping your shin vertical, not letting your knees go past the bar. Keep vertical shin, drive the hips back as far as you can until you feel a big stretch out of your hips and your hamstrings. At that point, you can grab the bar and kind of pull yourself down to get set up. Now, what you don't want to do is get down here, have your back nice and neutral, and then collapse down to the bar, lose that spinal position that you were working so hard to maintain. So think about hips going back. Chest should stay relatively high, not arched all the way up like you're going to be trying to do a back extension, but if this is neutral here, this is neutral here. Neutral again. So you don't want to go from here neutral, arch the back, neck, do all that kind of funky stuff. You want to stay fairly neutral throughout when you're starting the setup. Down, grab the bar. Now, most people, if they start out, a double overhand grip would be the best one to be able to work on grip strength and be able to work on at least symmetrical power. Most people, if they don't have the grip strength to be able to hold onto the bar this way, would benefit from going from a mixed grip. Now, if you're going mixed grip, switch it up every now and then just so you don't develop overworking on one side, because I have seen some people where they develop a rotational bias towards it. So start with a double overhand grip, vertical shin, hips back. Last, squeeze your shoulders down and back. So think about trying to crush your armpits to be able to get your lat activation going on, keep your back in neutral and extension, and also to make sure that you're not flexing into it as soon as you pull off. So when you're here, set your lats, vertical shin, hips are back. There's also some controversy as far as where you should look with your head. When you're down in that bottom position, if you look up, your neck is now in like max cervical extension, which may or may not be the best thing for you. Most people, I just say, stay neutral. When you're learning how to do a lift, neutral is your friend, and then as you get better at it, you can start playing around with what works best. But from here, if this is neutral for me standing, this is me neutral when I'm down grabbing the bar. This is essentially the same as this. You're not going to walk around and develop much power that way or develop much stability, so try to keep it as neutral as you can. You don't have to worry about pulling your chin back or doing any kind of funky stuff just yet, but just keep it neutral to start. Once you grab the bar, then you want to try to pull a little bit of tension on it to take some of the slack out of the bar. I see far too often people start like this and then they go, and they wind up trying to jerk the bar off the ground. So try to set it up so that when you grab the bar, you pull it off the ground just a little bit to put some tension into it. Let's say the bar is 135 pounds with the weights on it. You want to try to apply 130 pounds of pressure to it. So you're not actually moving the weight, but you're just applying tension. So if I'm down here, when you hear that the bar actually hit the outside edges of the plates, that's what I want to be able to hear before you start pulling. You don't want to hear that when you start pulling. So if I'm down and I put tension in the bar, you hear that chunk. As I lift the weight, you don't hear that chunk anymore. When I'm down here, if I was to lift from this position, you hear the bar slam into the plates. And if you're doing it really hard and fast, you're just going to be like running into a brick wall and wondering why you stop so suddenly, especially as the weight starts getting heavier. It puts a lot of stress on the body as far as the shoulders, the neck, the lower back, so try to avoid a lot of that. Last but not least, when you're doing this setup, so that you breathe. Breathing is really important, especially with heavier lifting. Before you do your lift, you want to think of taking a big breath in, filling your belly, and then squeezing down on top of it. Pretend like you're taking a deuce and you want to be able to really power that sucker on out. So when you're down here, grab, big breath in, squeeze your lats, tension on the bar, pull. When you get to the top, don't arch your back to lean into it. think of just squeezing your glutes and getting to neutral. Think military posture, nice vertical and neutral. Set the bar back by sitting back through your hips. So when you're going through a deadlift position, it's not about how much back movement there is. You want to try to keep the back movement as minimal as possible and try to get the hips to drive the work. So if you're doing this properly, you should feel like your glutes and your hamstrings are doing the work and your back's barely doing anything. So those are some basic techniques on deadlift. Hopefully that helps out. Have a good day.